Okay guys, so now let's talk about the principles behind church life. The Bible presents principles that we are supposed to practice in different ways. It's very strange because when we speak about the new birth, you see that the Bible is very clear what a person should do first, second, third, and fourth. But about church life, about discipleship, the Bible doesn't bring any method because the Lord wanted it not to be presented in a method. It's something that is based on many different circumstances. So the Lord presented it in principles, and they are not even explained one by one. You can just see it through the different examples. So what are those principles? We need to find them out. They are not deeply hidden, but they are not coming across very upfront. What are those principles and why are they important? To give you an example, the Lord established the principle of the washing of feet. He told his disciples that they needed to wash each other's feet. Nevertheless, that's a practice that is almost not done anymore. But why is that? Is it a mistake of our modern day culture? Or is it then that the Lord expected something else? In those days, of course, you understand that the slaves were the ones washing the feet of people, and that was a sign of really humility and submission. When the owner of the house would wash the feet of a guest and not let the slaves do it, but he would do it himself, it was a sign of deep honor and respect for the guests. And the Lord said, if I wash your feet, you should wash the feet of each other even more. And giving a sign that, of course, there's many lessons involved in that story, but the sign is that we have to serve one another and submit to one another and serve one another. So how could that principle be expressed in our days, in our culture? Here in Europe, it wouldn't make any sense to wash anyone's feet. In the Middle East, maybe it would make sense. So that's the way that the principles are expressed. Maybe in our days, I could wash my friend's car if they need it, or help them when they move, or help them paint a room, help them with the grass, or just be there for them whenever they need me emotionally or with advice. Just be there available to serve them and not to get any gain from them, but to give my life away for my friends. That is technically the principle behind the washing of feet. So in that way, the Bible uses principles that we need to find a way to express them in our culture, context, and situations. So what are the principles behind being church? If you read the text of Acts 2:41, for example, until the end of the chapter, you see an example of the church in Jerusalem, how they lived, what things they did. If you read 1 Corinthians from chapters 11 to 14, especially on chapter 14, you see a whole discussion from Paul, how Paul is confronting this church with the things that they were not doing right. And in chapter 14, he rounds up that argument, explaining them what they should do. And you see on verse 26 how he says that they should do, that they should come together often, and that everybody should participate and bring something to their gatherings. You see different practices also in Hebrews 10, for example. If to understand that chapter, you need to start reading on Hebrews 4, how this group of Jewish Christians were being persecuted in Rome, and they were being taken away of their properties and, being really troubled. And they were stepping back from their faith and going back to their synagogues and renouncing Jesus. And the writer of this letter encourages the disciples not to do that, and especially in times of persecution and suffering, that even more often they should be coming together, because that's the way they would survive that suffering and get over it and stay above it and be able to even give their lives for Christ. So we see different principles coming from across the Bible. In the PDF below, you're going to find these verses and more verses explaining what are the principles behind being church. So being church can be done in small groups, can be done in larger groups, but the key concept in this is that church is a way in which we are discipled, is one of the means of discipleship. Church is not a goal on itself, and church is not something where we are supposed to be forever. It's a temporary thing. We are in church until we are sent into the harvest field. We are in a spiritual family until we have our own spiritual family. We are being built and we are being trained. We're growing in a direction. We are not there yet. And church, as much as society, is a place in which we grow. We have an inner circle where we are safe, where we can confess our sins, where we can be weak, where we can be trained, where we can be helped, where we can be family. But we have larger circles where we can have fellowship, where we can be equipped by other people, where we can be friends with more brothers and sisters and learn from others. And there's many dynamics involved in all of this and many ways in which you can live this out. So, but in all of this, I'm going to present you many ideas that you can practice and try out and experiment with. But remember, there is not any method that is right or wrong. The principles are universal, and those principles you really need to remember, you really need to keep at heart, and you really need to build up each one of those principles in your group or community. You can change methods, you can vary as it's necessary, as long as the goals are being reached. And the ultimate goal of church is to serve one another. Babies need to grow, the fathers need to be equipped and supported, and the church needs to be a fellowship where people can get healed, people can fight new battles, people can be sent, people can be prayed for. And that's the heart of being church. It's a society of brothers and sisters, but it's a society in movement and in development. If you have a man, for example, that is 55 and he's still living with his mom, it is not normal, it is not natural. A man should have his own space, should have his own life. And of course there are exceptions, but we don't start teaching exceptions. We teach the foundations, what is right. And the exceptions will come if they are necessary, and we will need to be able to deal with it as it comes across. So take a good look at the document below. Take a good look at the principles that we see in being church, in being a family, a spiritual family. And don't just copy it. Think it through. Think if this makes sense for your context and your reality. If you see that what we present doesn't work for you and you don't know what to do, feel free to make contact with us. We will gladly come over and help you find out the best way to be church. So I hope this short lesson helped you.